It matters what we believe. Some beliefs are like walled gardens. They encourage exclusiveness and the feeling of being especially privileged. Other beliefs are expansive and lead the way into wider and deeper sympathies. Some beliefs are like shadows clouding children's days with fears and unknown calamities. Other beliefs are like sunshine, blessing children with the warmth of happiness. Some beliefs are divisive, separating the saved from the unsaved, friends from enemies. Other beliefs are bonds in a world community where sincere differences beautify the pattern. Some beliefs are like blinders, shutting off the power to choose one's own direction, while other beliefs are like gateways, opening wide vistas for exploration. Some beliefs weaken a person's selfhood. They blight the growth of resourcefulness. Other beliefs nurture self-confidence and enrich the feeling of personal worth. Some beliefs are rigid, like the body of death, impotent in a changing world, while other beliefs are pliable, like the young sapling ever growing with the upward thrust of life.
Thanks, Peg. About 30 years ago, I joined the UU Church in Ann Arbor. And a couple of years after I joined, I took a class called Building Your Own Theology. It's a class that really changed my life at that time. I was not only able to reveal to myself my own beliefs, but I was able to learn how to take those beliefs into the rest of my life, not just on Sunday mornings. Now, 30 years is a long time, and for at least 20 of those 30 years, I've been wanting to take that class again because I knew that my belief system had probably changed a little along the way. But you know how it is in churches. When you finally say something out loud like, I would like to do this, or I would like to do that, or I would like to take a class on building your own theology, you've really just volunteered to do it yourself. And so that is what I did. So me and Jen together began teaching this class, Building Your Own Theology. We would meet 2 times a month, every other Saturday. Jen and I would switch off on facilitating the class. And the class itself lasted 2.5 hours. It seems like a long time for a class, but I'll tell you, oftentimes we would have stayed later if my carriage had not been awaiting me out in the parking lot. In the beginning, in the first parts, we would figure out what it is that we believe, and that can be quite revealing to ourselves. And then we would figure out how to articulate our beliefs, and quite frankly, that just takes hard work. And in the second half, we're going to learn how to take our beliefs and take them into the world. I would just finally like to say that, last Saturday we met and we planned this service. And as an entire group, we picked the hymns, we picked the readings, I wish it had been videotaped so that cooperation and working together, as we did last Saturday, could be shared with other committee members. It was truly a sight to see. And finally, I just want to thank all of you for your dedication and your honesty, your friendship, and your fun. Our first one will be Greg.
Hello, I'm Greg Hamusfire. So today a bit of background on myself. I was not raised in going to church or being religious or having words of God or Christ in my normal daily life. As a child, especially on Sunday, we did tasks at home in the same place where I lived, in the main farmhouse on the farm of my grandparents, my mom's parents, who lived in their house next door, and where I now have my own home and farm with my sheep and dogs. My folks did not farm, but my grandparents still had cows and crops to feed them. As a family, we did mostly farm work and yard work in the summer, plowing snow, feeding animals, and cutting wood in the winter. My brother and I were both also active in Boy Scouts, and later both working on neighboring farms. No time was spent about religion or church. As I grew up, society helped shape me, not religion. I came late to any type of ideas about God. The word and notion of God was just that, a word. It held no personal meaning to me. When I was in college and lived up north and out west, I became interested in religion for a few years, and always the same outcome. I don't know about all this supernatural or paranormal belief stuff, but being a good person and following certain rules seemed to be the boiled down message. Mostly I put the spirit out of my mind for a long time, since it didn't add up to me. Also, the restrictions put in place by various parts of society seemed to stretch me too far, and I decided being a good person and being a good Christian were at odds sometimes with what I saw taking place in the context of church and state and society's well-being. Last fall, I came to realize that I wanted to know why or how I could be considered not a good Christian. For a gal I thought was a good person, just as I thought I was a good person. That she had prayed and God told me, you're not the right one for me because you don't believe in Christ or God or the Spirit like I do. You're not a good enough Christian. So that stung a little bit. And again, I didn't understand the notion of Christ and God and Holy Spirit being different sides of the same coin, when I also knew how the coin spins the same and that they're all the same. That I didn't understand the need for the Trinity. So remembering a tiny bit of the past and remembering their openness to many different folks, I looked up the Unitarian churches in the area and saw this church on the Google map. So I packed myself up with courage and drove here, walked up the steps, and was greeted by kindness and guidance by people that day that I now know as my friends, Alice and Mike and Pam, Paul and Steve, and many others. Lynn asked me a few weeks later if I would join the Build Your Own Theology class, that she thought I would enjoy it, and so I have very much enjoyed it as a part of my life. I've come to feel comfort in loosely defining my own theology as agnostic and humanistic. For I'm more concerned in being a good man than knowing what waits for me after my death. That the spirit world doesn't matter to me, because if we were not good to each other, then what is the point for trying to reach nirvana or heaven or something else? The major religions seem to start the same. They should be good to one another. Then they diverge shortly after in giving reasons to dislike and persecuting each other. Hopefully I will be reincarnated, for to live again and again trying to do good and helping others is my main goal in life. That goal seems to be worth repeating. This church, this building, this community has become my safe place, a place for both giving spark and energy to others and charging our batteries with others. I know many of us feel the same way. My story today is one that maybe everyone has come to in their own ways of thought and life. A few weeks back, I was at work, showing a coworker how to perform a task. Pretty simple. You just unload the machine and put another piece on. And while I was doing this, he asked me, so where do you go to church at? What kind is it? So I said, well, see, we have talked over the past couple of years about sheep, of course, and his various questions back and forth, his interest in having a few sheep. At one point in the text, I told him I was arriving at a group meeting at church, Build Your Own Theology group. We'd get back to him later. He must have remembered that. I said, well, I'm now a member of the Universalist Unitarian Church in East Liberty, and told him where it was, that we believe in accepting all faiths like Christ, Buddha, Brahman, Allah, others, even atheists and agnostics. Boiled down, we strive to be good people and live our theology, that we all have value and worth and should be good to each other. He replied, well, I don't believe that. Especially about homosexual men being allowed to be that way, having relations with other men. I said, well, I don't have any problem with anyone being whatever they choose in regards to sexuality. It doesn't bother me a bit what a person does in their bedroom or the bathroom. Being a good person doesn't have anything to do with that. That good people are just good people. He replied it just wasn't right. The Bible says that. I said, well, the Bible says a lot of things that seem rather strange when all taken out of context, but I don't discount the Bible as an important text. I told him I'm puzzled when I hear the stories like God may be better than someone else because of their sexuality or nationality or skin color or outward physical sex. Puzzled that God knew me and made me and will know my whole life until the end. If that's the case, how come he set me up from the conception to be damned by him in the end? That's that we know gender is determined through the processes of science known as pregnancy. Many factors go into who we are in our sexuality, that I'm a straight man and it doesn't matter whatever I am or who you are. I continue to tell him that my logic sequence is straightforward, I think. If you believe God made us all, then he made us as we were born, that we don't choose to be straight or something else. Christ didn't talk about loving one another except for the gay men, except for the black woman, except for the people that are not white, Caucasian, except that whether they're American or not American. Christ talked about feeding the hungry and giving to the poor, comforting the immigrant, and healing the sick. And that is all that matters to me, not whether someone is gay or straight or white or American. That if God made me, then I should also receive his salvation, since he set me up at the beginning to be who I am, yet gave me freedom to be something else, then knew what I would be all my life, then gave me the damnation at the end if I didn't live up to what he started. It seemed confusing for me to understand. So he acted as though maybe he hadn't heard those words in such a way before. Said he thought maybe I had a lot of truth in some of that. And I felt glad that I was able to be strong enough to speak up in today's society, today's American society. I felt so good to know my faith is strong and it can be recharged here in this community, that I can grow here with all of us growing together in this non-zero-sum notion that we all more together than the sum of just us as individuals, that we can go forth with spark again and again. Thank you.
Yeah, come on up.
Lynn asked me if I had a preference in order in which I would present mine. I should have said, don't put me after Greg. I believe in love. When I walked into the church, this church, and saw the words, God is love, on the altar, I knew I was in the right place at last. I felt immediately the generous fellowship I was seeking in this place of love and diversity and tolerance. I believe in humanism, seeing the potential value and goodness in human beings. I believe deeply that people who are loving, kind, generous, empathetic, compassionate, and humble live giving lives, and they teach or encourage others to love with their actions. I learned this at my mom's knee when she and my dad invited her mother, my grandmother, who had rheumatoid arthritis, and my great-great aunt, who was blind and bedridden, to live with the 5 of us. Both were widows. My grandmother, who was able to help with ironing and baking when her arthritis would go into remission, was the love of my young life. She read the Burgess books to my brothers and me every night. We cared for the 2 of them daily. I remember carrying dinner trays to my blind aunt and holding her hand to touch the food on her plate as I told her what she was about to eat. They each added to the deeply woven texture of our daily lives until they passed. I believe that my fellow human beings are basically good. I also believe that some people become corrupt, twisted, narcissistic, or crippled morally by the way they are treated in life or by random life events. This results in some of those people becoming filled with resentment or hate, and as a result, they lose their moral compass and harm themselves or others. Yelling as a response is seldom needed. Hitting or physical restraint is needed only when people are about to hurt themselves or others. Justice, however, is imperative. I believe in truth, gently delivered with love and some humor, or even a bit of soft sarcasm. None of us is perfect, are we? Oh, you stumbled? You changed your mind? So did I. I believe in the healing power of the natural world. Interacting with plants and animals and the earth soothes my soul, wherever it resides. I feel it when watering and weeding my flowers in the morning while the sandhill cranes call to one another in the distance. I feel it when my granddaughter runs to pick strawberries and cucumbers from my garden and then relishes them at dinner. I feel it when I walk in the waves over the rocks on the shore of Lake Superior. I believe that music is spiritually uplifting as well, and I especially enjoy the music in this church. Thank you. A Bach concerto, or 'Tis a Gift to Be Simple, played on the cello by Yo-Yo Ma, sends my soul soaring. Memory, sung by Jennifer Lawrence in the new movie Cats, does the same. My daughter singing a song in her beautiful voice at her nightly dance party, which helps her to relax, lifts me up. I believe in the ideal of universal Jeffersonian education for all children so that when they reach adulthood, they are able to think for themselves and utilize their good judgment when exercising their right to vote, doing their work, or when considering religion. I believe children learn best from modeling and from working on projects. Teaching a child to read hands her the keys to the whole wide world. I believe in science. The earth needs our greatest effort now to see that human folly does not destroy our planet. Climate change is real, and we must stop it and then reverse it. I believe in commitment to community. Civic participation and leadership strengthens the individual and makes our community stronger. And I'm an optimist. I think that tomorrow will be better than today. Human effort, even in the face of acts of destruction and violence or environmental destruction, makes life better. The people in this church will help us get there. I have faith in the human heart to find a way forward and to make sense of it all. As I said before, I believe in love. God is love. I also love what is missing at the Liberty Universal Unitarian Church. There is no misogyny, no racism, no xenophobia, no homophobia, and no patronizing here. People are safe here and welcomed by all. Thank you for welcoming us.
In my childhood, my family attended a Presbyterian church where I heard the teachings of Jesus. I accepted the teachings, but I didn't believe the stories of miracles. By the time I graduated from high school, I had become a follower of Ayn Rand. By her philosophy, one should hold his or herself above all else. Rational thought was man's highest achievement, and all else was nonsense. Accepting this, I took on a new self-confidence and determination. I felt I was superior to most people. I left behind whatever didn't serve me, including God. During my freshman year of college, I dared myself to say F you to God. Believing I could handle anything, I asked God if He was there to give me a real challenge. A couple of months later, I was working at a summer factory job. A large piece of metal fell onto my head, putting me into a coma for at least a week. After this injury, I experienced life with many physical and mental impairments. My self-esteem plummeted. Suddenly I was disabled, inferior to other people. Reality no longer worked for me. Spiritually, I became an agnostic rather than an atheist. I didn't know anything anymore. Over the next few years, I made significant progress in my rehabilitation. Although, according to neuropsychological testing, I remained impaired both physically and mentally. Living at home in the next years, dependent on my parents, I sank into depression. I attempted suicide in 1988. I spent the next year in and out of a mental hospital. From that low point, thanks to a burn injury rehab program, my level of independence and self-esteem slowly grew. I moved into a single apartment and returned to college, finishing a CAD/CAM degree in 1992. Over the next years, though I achieved most of my recovery goals, I lagged behind my peers in social development, especially in relating to the opposite sex. Hence, I was very lonely. To feel okay, I needed something beyond other people's acceptance. I looked at my spiritual beliefs. I didn't find much. I sampled a couple of Christian churches. I even became born again. Still, not much changed in my beliefs. I still didn't know. I went on a retreat with a group of Buddhists, and I felt that their view made more sense to me than the Christian view. I took bodhisattva vows. I started to meditate, but over the next years, my faith in formless consciousness waned. I felt I needed a God, but I didn't feel comfortable with Christian theology. In 2001, I discovered the Hindu faith. In their view, the one formless God, called Brahman, took on many different forms, according to each person's faith. I moved to California, where there were different Hindu groups that I could attend. I chose a female Hindu saint called Amma, or mother as my guru, who unconditionally loved me and who would lead me to enlightenment. In my understanding, enlightenment encompasses all things, both conceivable and inconceivable. The sensory world is but an illusion, blocking the awareness of true reality, where all concepts, including loneliness and sorrow, become empty and unreal. The concepts of normal and impaired lose all meaning. There is no need to compare oneself to others, because in truth there are no others. All is one. So that's where I am today. And my teachers, I think, our fundamental teaching is that my religion is love, and not that each person has to be a Hindu. She encourages everybody to follow their own faith, but just to have more like devotion to it. Okay, thank you.
I've spoken from this pulpit many times before about my beliefs and so forth, so I decided to take a little different tack today. I'm going to kind of tell you what we do more in the religious education adult class. Like, we'll have a readings or something that then we can discuss. And to give you an example, readings for session 5 dealt with good and evil. The idea of good and bad was, of course, familiar to me since childhood, but I never really thought much about evil. Little Peggy was sometimes a bad girl, but she was never an evil girl. Satan, demons, and devils were not part of my upbringing in the Quaker Church. But in our readings, however, one author described evil almost as if it were a cosmic force, a power not of our own making. Evil appeared like some amorphous vapor oozing through the sewer system, seeping surreptitiously to enter tiny cracks in our homes, filtering into our souls, and turning us into demonic creatures. The only protection from an evil like that is religion, according to this view. We must immunize ourselves from evil through prayer or through dedicated soul work, and we must always be on guard to avoid temptation because evil is everywhere. Well, you can imagine that would get quite a bit of conversation going there. With a bit of irreligious sarcasm, I wondered, if evil is a cosmic force, why couldn't good be a cosmic force too? Maybe we are just as likely to catch oozing good forces, which might turn us into saints without any effort on our part. Apparently, nobody worries about that. Perhaps the subject of good and evil deserves years of philosophical reflection, but I pretty much rejected the notion of evil as a cosmic force on just general gut reaction. I concluded that good and evil are just descriptive words we humans assign to certain actions according to our own biased views. When a man flew an airplane into the Twin Towers, most of us consider that to be an evil action due to the loss of human life. But others who shared his politics believed his actions were so good, in fact, that he would spend eternity in heaven with 40 virgins. If the same action, like crashing into a building, can be labeled as both good or evil by different people, it seems to me the differences between the two are not as clear as we might hope. When we are given difficult what-if situations in which parts of our action create good results for some people, but parts of the same action create bad results for other people, it's no wonder we struggle with good and evil. I believe the yardstick to determine good or evil is a human invention. And different people have different yardsticks, and they are all a bit messy and uneven. Our human ability to gauge good and evil is flawed and unreliable, and perhaps we should spend less time slapping judgments of good and evil on other people and spend more time simply promoting human welfare. Like so many other things in religion, even after studying this subject a bit, I'm still left with some rather fuzzy notions.
I'm sorry.
I titled my presentation My Spiritual Journey, and I've broken it down into 3 parts. Part 1 I called My Christian Era. I was raised in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod on Wesley Street in Jackson, Michigan. When I was 12 years old, I attended the church-sponsored catechism classes. This was an instruction on the religious belief of the church. Actually, it was an indoctrination. After each memorized statement, there was an affirmation. This is most certainly true. I was taught that the Lutheran Church had the right answers and the right path to salvation. Other churches, while still Christian, they had erroneous beliefs. Then, as I looked into the Holy Bible, I was puzzled by the difference in events and content of the 4 Gospels. If the red ink passages were the words of Jesus, then why do they differ? At age 17 or 18, I became aware of the fact that there were no dark-skinned people in the congregation. So why, if we were the one church with the right understanding on God and salvation, were they not here? After all, this church was right in their neighborhood. I asked Mom. Her answer was, we have our church and they have their church. This presented a dilemma for me, and I quit attending this church. I could not accept that as true a church where not everyone is welcome. Now we go to part 2, a discovery. The Universalist Unitarian Church. It was March in the year 2005, and I had made a decision to investigate the various churches in the area. Maybe I would find one that is acceptable. I read in the Salesman newspaper that a Reverend Cynthia Landrum was to present a sermon on the next Sunday about religious diversity. I was at that time a Christian agnostic because of the many contradictions and failures of the Christian religion. As I saw it, nobody really knows. They just think they do. They just say they do, or they just say only God knows. How can this be? And so I made the decision to attend this mysterious Universalist Unitarian Church service. I was amazed to find rational discourse and love in the sermon and at social after the service. These people were not hell and Satan worshipers after all, as I had been told. Part 3, my spiritual journey now. At present, I am a religious humanist with emphasis on nature-centered spirituality. I gravitate to spiritual connection that values the rhythm of the seasons and the importance of the real world around us. I have learned about the influence of the Roman Flavians on original Christianity, but nevertheless, somebody has to author the religion and keep it going. To me, the best part of Christianity is the fascinating and skillful way it has adapted concepts from other traditions. This indeed makes Christianity a valid religion for many persons. And so I continue on with no conclusive answers and all questions valid. And still I can say, no one really knows.